She was only 7 years old when she made a choice that would bring 80 Hell's Angels to her doorstep. In the frozen heart of a South Dakota winter, while everyone else looked away, she approached the man everyone feared. He was massive, covered in leather and patches, shaking violently in temperatures that could kill. She had something he desperately needed, something precious that her grandmother had made with love. Without hesitation, without fear, without judgment, she gave it to him. What happened next would challenge everything this small town believed about prejudice, about kindness, about the gap between reputation and reality. Because when you show compassion to someone society says doesn't deserve it, sometimes they show you exactly who they really are. The February wind cut through Deadwood like a serrated blade, carrying with it the bitter promise of more snow. At 6:30 in the morning, the streets lay empty except for the occasional pickup truck rumbling past historic storefronts, their windows frosted over with intricate patterns of ice. The Black Hills loomed in the distance, their pine-covered slopes barely visible through the pre-dawn gray. This was the heart of winter in South Dakota, when temperatures dropped below zero and stayed there for weeks, when the only sensible thing to do was stay inside with the heat cranked high and wait for spring. Sophia Mitchell pressed her nose against the passenger window of her mother's aging Honda Civic, watching her breath fog the glass. She was small for 7, with long chestnut hair that her mother had braided that morning, and brown eyes that seemed too large for her delicate face. Her pink winter coat was second-hand, bought from the thrift store on Main Street, but she'd never complained about it. She rarely complained about anything, even though life had handed her more reasons than most children her age. "We're almost there, sweetheart," Jennifer Mitchell said from the driver's seat, her voice tight with exhaustion. She'd worked a double shift at the hospital in Rapid City, driving the 45 minutes each way, because Deadwood's small clinic didn't need full-time nurses. The bags under her eyes had become permanent fixtures over the past 8 months, ever since the accident that took Sophia's father. "Just need to grab some breakfast before I drop you at school." "I'm not very hungry, Mama." Sophia's voice was soft, almost apologetic. She knew money was tight. She heard her mother crying sometimes at night, saw the stack of bills on the kitchen table growing higher each week. "You need to eat something, baby. Growing girls need breakfast." Jennifer's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The heating in the old Honda was struggling, barely keeping the frost from forming on the inside of the windshield. She'd meant to get it fixed, but there was always something more urgent, demanding the little money they had. The Silverado Diner appeared ahead, its neon sign casting a warm amber glow across the snow-packed parking lot. It was a Deadwood institution, operating since 1952, with red vinyl booths and a long counter where locals gathered to discuss everything from weather to politics. Frank Hutchins had owned it for 30 years, ever since returning from Vietnam with a Purple Heart and a desire to never leave his hometown again. The building itself was unremarkable, single-story, wood-sided, with large windows that revealed a cozy interior where steam rose from coffee cups and the smell of bacon filled the air. Jennifer pulled into the parking lot, navigating around patches of ice that maintenance crews hadn't yet cleared. That's when Sophia saw him. He stood near the dumpster area behind the diner, partially hidden in shadow but impossible to miss. A tall man, broad-shouldered and heavily built, wearing a leather vest over a black shirt despite temperatures that hovered around 5 degrees. Even from the car, Sophia could see him trembling, his arms wrapped around himself in a futile attempt to generate warmth. His motorcycle, a massive Harley-Davidson with chrome that caught the parking lot lights, sat nearby, frost already forming on its leather seat. "Mama, that man is cold." Sophia pointed toward him, her small finger leaving a mark on the fogged window. Jennifer followed her daughter's gaze, and her expression hardened immediately. She recognized the vest, the patches, the unmistakable insignia even in the dim morning light. Hell's Angels. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened further, knuckles going white. "Don't look at him, Sophia. We're going inside." "But Mama, he's shaking. He needs help." "Those kinds of people don't need our help. They're dangerous." Jennifer's voice carried an edge that Sophia had learned meant the conversation was over. She unbuckled her seatbelt and opened her door, the cold immediately invading the car's interior. "Come on, quickly." Sophia climbed out slowly, her snow boots crunching on the frozen pavement. Her mother grabbed her hand and started pulling her toward the diner's entrance, but Sophia's eyes remained fixed on the shivering man. He'd looked up when their car doors slammed, and for just a moment their eyes met across the parking lot. His face was weathered, lined with the kind of experiences that aged a person beyond their years. A short beard covered his jaw, more grey than black. But it was his eyes that caught Sophia. They weren't mean or scary like her mother seemed to think. They looked tired, sad even. "Sophia, now." Jennifer's voice was sharper. Inside the diner, warmth enveloped them like a blanket. The familiar sounds of morning, the sizzle of the grill, the murmur of conversation, the clink of silverware against plates, created a comforting backdrop. Frank Hutchins stood behind the counter, pouring coffee for a regular customer, and he nodded at Jennifer with the kind of recognition that came from years of seeing the same faces. "Morning, Jenny. Morning, little miss." His voice was gravelly, worn smooth by decades of cigarettes he'd quit 5 years ago on doctor's orders. "Usual booth?" "Please, Frank. Thanks." Jennifer guided Sophia to their favorite spot near the window where they could watch the street wake up. She helped her daughter out of her coat, hanging it on the hook beside the booth, then removed her own jacket. Her nurse's scrubs were visible beneath, light blue and decorated with tiny teddy bears that the children's ward patients always loved. Sophia slid into the booth, but immediately turned to look out the window. She could just barely see the man in the parking lot, still standing in the same spot, still shaking. He'd moved slightly, stepping from foot to foot in an obvious attempt to generate warmth. As she watched, he blew on his hands, rubbing them together vigorously. "Why doesn't he go inside where it's warm?" Sophia asked quietly. Jennifer didn't look up from the menu she wasn't really reading. She always ordered the same thing. Because people like that aren't welcome everywhere. Frank doesn't allow motorcycle clubs in here. It's his rule, and it's a good one. They cause trouble. He doesn't look like trouble. He looks cold. Sophia Marie Mitchell, enough. I mean it. Jennifer's tone left no room for argument. She caught Frank's eye, and he headed over with his coffee pot and order pad, ready to take their breakfast request. But Sophia couldn't stop thinking about the man outside. While her mother ordered scrambled eggs and toast for both of them, Sophia's fingers unconsciously moved to the scarf wrapped around her neck. It was pink, with little white snowflakes, knitted by her grandmother before she passed away 2 years ago. Sophia wore it every day in winter, treasuring it as one of her few connections to Grandma Helen, who used to tell her stories and bake cookies that tasted like love itself. The scarf was warm. The man outside had nothing. The internal debate lasted maybe 30 seconds. Sophia knew her mother would be angry. She knew she'd probably get in trouble. But Grandma Helen's voice echoed in her memory, something she'd said once while they worked together on a puzzle. "Kindness is never wrong, baby girl. Even when people don't understand it, even when it's hard, kindness is always the right choice." "I need to use the bathroom," Sophia announced suddenly, sliding out of the booth before her mother could respond. "Make it quick. Food will be here soon." Jennifer was distracted, fumbling in her purse for bills to pay for breakfast, mentally calculating how much gas she'd need to make it through the week. Sophia grabbed her coat from the hook, her small fingers working quickly. She walked toward the bathroom hallway as if that was her destination, but as soon as she was out of her mother's line of sight, she veered toward the back exit. Her heart pounded with the transgression of disobedience, but something stronger pushed her forward. The door was heavy, requiring her full weight to push it open, and then she was outside again, the cold hitting her like a physical force. The man had moved closer to the building, seeking whatever shelter the wall might provide from the wind. Up close, he was even more imposing, easily over 6 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed to span an impossible width. His leather vest bore multiple patches, the Death Head insignia, Hell's Angels rocker across the top, Black Hills territory marker across the bottom, and Vice President designation on the front. His arms were covered in tattoos visible even beneath the goosebumps and frost that had formed on his skin. He looked up sharply when the door opened, his body tensing with the automatic defensive posture of someone used to trouble. Then he saw it was a child. A tiny girl with a pink coat and braided hair, looking up at him with those enormous brown eyes that held no fear, only concern. "Sir?" Sophia's voice came out smaller than she'd intended, nearly swallowed by the wind. She took 3 steps toward him, closing the distance despite every safety lesson her mother had taught her about strangers. "You're very cold." Ryan Caldwell stared down at the child, completely blindsided. In 38 years of life, 20 of them with the club, no one had ever approached him with pure concern. People crossed the street when they saw him coming. Parents pulled their children closer. Store clerks watched him with suspicious eyes, waiting for him to steal something. The vest and patches he wore with pride were also his curse, marking him as something dangerous, something to be feared and avoided. "I'm all right, kid. You should get back inside." His voice came out rougher than he'd intended, the cold affecting his vocal cords. He could barely feel his fingers anymore, and his teeth were chattering so hard he had to clench his jaw to stop them. "You're shaking really bad." Sophia took another step closer, and Ryan instinctively stepped back, not wanting to scare her or cause problems. The last thing he needed was some parent screaming that he'd approached their child. "Just waiting for someone. I'll be fine." It was a lie. His bike had broken down 3 miles outside town, right where cell service dropped to nothing in the hills. He'd pushed it to the nearest parking lot, which happened to be this diner's, at 2 in the morning. He'd been trying to fix it ever since, but his toolbox was missing a crucial socket, and his fingers were now too numb to hold anything properly. He'd called Dale, his chapter president, but Dale was in Sturgis handling club business and wouldn't be back until afternoon. The diner had opened at 6, but Ryan knew Frank's rule about bikers. He'd been asked to leave establishments enough times to recognize when he wasn't welcome inside. Sophia unwound the scarf from her neck, her small fingers working at the knot her mother had tied that morning. The pink fabric fell away, immediately exposing her to the cold. But she didn't hesitate. She held it out to Ryan with both hands, like an offering. "You need this more than me. I'm going back inside where it's warm, but you're staying out here." Her logic was unassailable, delivered with the straightforward honesty only children possessed. Ryan looked at the scarf, then at the girl, then back at the scarf. Something in his chest cracked, a place that had been frozen for years suddenly thawing. This child, this tiny, vulnerable child, was offering him her only protection from the cold. She didn't see his vest, his patches, his tattoos. She saw a human being who needed help. "I can't take your scarf, kid. Your mom will—" "My grandma made it. She said kindness is never wrong." Sophia pushed the scarf toward him more insistently. "Please take it. I don't want you to be cold anymore." The morning light was growing stronger, revealing details that had been hidden in shadow. Ryan could see her coat was too thin for this weather, see that her boots were worn, see that this child probably didn't have much to spare. Yet here she was, giving away something precious without a second thought. He reached out slowly, carefully, taking the scarf with hands that trembled from more than just cold. The fabric was soft, still warm from her body heat, hand-knitted with obvious care. "Thank you," he managed, his voice cracking slightly. This is really kind of you." Sophia smiled, a genuine expression of pure happiness that lit up her entire face. "You're welcome. I hope you get warm soon." Then before he could say anything else, she turned and ran back toward the door, disappearing inside the diner before the cold could punish her for her bare neck. Ryan stood alone in the parking lot, holding a pink scarf with white snowflakes, and for the first time in years, he felt his eyes burning with something other than cold. He wrapped the scarf around his neck. It was comically small on his large frame, barely going around once, but it was the warmth of the gesture more than the fabric that affected him. He looked down at the scarf, at the careful stitches, at the obvious love that had gone into making it. Then he looked at his bike, at the diner, at the small town that had never welcomed him or his brothers. Something shifted in his chest, a resolve forming. This kindness deserved an answer. Inside the diner, Sophia slipped back into the booth just as Frank arrived with their plates. Jennifer was too focused on her phone, checking her work schedule for next week, to notice her daughter's missing scarf immediately. It wasn't until they were halfway through breakfast that she looked up and frowned. "Where's your scarf?" Sophia swallowed her bite of toast carefully before answering. "I gave it to the cold man outside." The fork in Jennifer's hand clattered to her plate. "You did what?" "He was shaking really bad, Mama. He needed it more than me." Sophia's voice was calm, certain in her decision despite her mother's obvious displeasure. "Sophia, that was dangerous and inappropriate. We don't approach strange men, especially not ones like that. Do you understand?" Jennifer's voice was low but urgent, aware of the other diners around them. "That scarf was from your grandmother. It was special. Grandma said kindness is never wrong." Sophia repeated, her small chin lifting slightly. She made the scarf, but she would want someone to use it if they needed it. That man needed it. Jennifer opened her mouth to argue further, to explain about safety and appropriate behavior and why motorcycle gang members were people you avoided at all costs. But something in her daughter's eyes, that same stubborn compassion that Helen had possessed, that same unshakable moral conviction, made her pause. She was angry, yes. Frightened, definitely, but also, somewhere beneath those reactions, reluctantly proud. "We're going to have a long talk about safety when we get home," she said finally, resuming her meal with mechanical movements. "You can't just approach strangers, Sophia. The world isn't always as kind as you are." "But it should be," Sophia said quietly, and Jennifer had no response to that. Outside, Ryan Caldwell pulled out his phone with numb fingers and sent a text message to a group chat labeled Black Hills Chapter. His thumbs could barely hit the right keys, but he managed. "Brothers, need to tell you about something that just happened. Something important. Can someone pick me up from the Silverado diner? Bike broke down. Got a story you need to hear." The response was immediate. Multiple brothers confirming they'd be there within the hour. But it was Dale's response that made Ryan smile slightly. "On my way back now, 20 minutes out. Story better be good." Ryan looked down at the pink scarf around his neck, thinking about brown eyes and small hands, and kindness that asked nothing in return. "It's better than good," he typed back. "It's something we need to make right." The morning sun finally broke over the Black Hills, casting golden light across Deadwood's snow-covered streets. The temperature remained brutally cold, but Ryan Caldwell didn't feel it quite as much anymore. He had a pink scarf, a warm feeling in his chest that had nothing to do with body temperature, and the beginning of an idea that would change everything. He just needed his brothers to understand why it mattered, and knowing his brothers, really knowing them, beneath the leather and patches and reputation, he had no doubt they would. The rumble of motorcycles echoed through Deadwood streets at 7:15 that morning, a sound that made residents pause mid-step and look toward Main Street with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. 4 Harleys appeared, their chrome catching the morning light, engines throaty and powerful even at low speed. They turned into the Silverado Diner's parking lot in formation, stopping near where Ryan Caldwell still stood beside his broken-down bike. Dale Warren dismounted first, his movements betraying the stiffness that came with age and old injuries. At 45, he'd been with the club for 23 years, worked his way up from prospect to president through loyalty and level-headed leadership. His salt and pepper hair was pulled back in a ponytail, his face weathered like old leather, but his eyes were sharp and assessing. The president patch on his vest carried weight throughout the Black Hills territory. "Cold enough for you, brother?" Dale's voice carried dry humor as he approached Ryan. Then he stopped, his eyes narrowing. "Is that a pink scarf?" The other 3 riders had dismounted as well. Marcus Webb, road captain, tall and lean with tattoos covering every visible inch of skin. Tommy Briggs, enforcer, built like a linebacker with hands that could crush walnuts. And Keith Monroe, sergeant-at-arms, quiet and observant, missing 2 fingers on his left hand from a deployment in Afghanistan. "There's a story?" Ryan said, his voice still rough from the cold. "A good one, best one I've had in a long time." "Must be, if it's got you standing out here looking like Easter." Marcus grinned, but there was no real mockery in it. The brothers gave each other grief constantly. It was part of their bond, but underlying it was genuine concern. "Your bike dead?" "Fuel pump, I think. Couldn't fix it in this cold. Hands stopped working around 3 this morning. I've been out here for 5 hours. Ryan unwound the scarf carefully, holding it with surprising gentleness for such large hands. "This scarf, a little girl gave it to me, maybe 7 years old. Came out of that diner, walked right up to me, and gave me the scarf off her own neck because she said I looked cold." The 4 men fell silent, processing this information. In their world, a world of hard rides, harder reputations, and constant awareness of how society viewed them, genuine kindness from civilians was rare. Kindness from children was almost unheard of. Parents typically pulled their kids away, warned them about those dangerous bikers, taught them to fear the patches and leather. "Kid just walked up?" Dale asked carefully. "Wasn't scared, not even a little. Looked at me like I was just a person who needed help. Didn't see the vest, didn't care about the club, just saw someone cold and decided to do something about it." Ryan's voice carried an emotion they rarely heard from him, genuine wonder. "Her grandmother made this scarf. She told me that. It's probably one of her most treasured things, and she gave it to a complete stranger without hesitation." Tommy stepped closer, examining the scarf with surprising delicacy. His reputation as the chapter's enforcer was well earned, but few people knew he had 3 daughters at home, all under 10. "That's hand-knitted. Quality work, too. Someone spent hours making this. Kid gave away something irreplaceable." "Where is she now?" Keith asked, his voice quiet but intense. As sergeant-at-arms, he was responsible for club security, but he was also the one who organized their annual toy run every Christmas, the one who made sure they gave back to communities that usually wanted nothing to do with them. Inside with her mom, I saw them through the window. Mom didn't look happy when she realized what happened. Can't blame her. I'm exactly what parents warn their kids about. Ryan's expression was complicated, a mix of gratitude and old pain. But the kid, she just smiled and went back inside like she'd done the most normal thing in the world. Dale was quiet for a long moment, his hand unconsciously moving to touch the patches on his own vest. the death head insignia, the rocker that said Hell's Angels in letters that made strangers cross the street. He'd worn these patches for over 2 decades, knew exactly what they meant and what they cost. The club was family, was brotherhood, was identity, but it was also a wall between them and the rest of the world, a barrier that made simple human connection nearly impossible. "What's the kid's name?" Dale asked finally. Didn't ask. Didn't want to scare her or make her uncomfortable. She did her kindness and left, no strings attached. Ryan looked down at the scarf again. "But I can't just let this go, Dale. I can't take something this precious from a child and give nothing back." "No," Dale agreed slowly, his mind already working. "No, you can't. We can't." He looked at his brothers, seeing the same thought process happening in their expressions. "This is exactly what we've been talking about. The community sees us as a threat, as criminals, as something dangerous to avoid. But what are we really? What have we always tried to be beneath the reputation?" "Brothers," Tommy said simply. "Family. Community," Keith added. "We take care of our own." "And sometimes our own is bigger than just the club," Marcus finished. "Sometimes it's the people brave enough to show us kindness when everyone else shows us fear." Dale nodded slowly, decisively. "Ryan, you said the kid and her mom are inside. Do they look like they're struggling?" Ryan thought about the thin coat, the worn boots, the mother's exhausted face and nurse's scrubs. "Yeah, single mom, I'd guess. Working hard, making ends meet kind of situation. The kind where every dollar matters and extras are rare. So a kid who doesn't have much gave away something precious to someone who society says doesn't deserve kindness." Dale's voice was firm now, the tone of a president making a club decision. "Brothers, I think it's time we remind this town who we really are. Not the reputation, not the stereotype. The reality." "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked, though the grin spreading across his face suggested he already knew. "I'm thinking we make a call. Every chapter within 200 miles. Everyone who can ride, rides. We come back here and we show this little girl and this whole town what it means when you show kindness to a Hell's Angel." Dale's expression was intense, purposeful. "We return that kindness tenfold. We make sure everyone knows that beneath these vests, we're men who understand loyalty, who honor debts, and who never forget when someone treats us like human beings." 80 brothers, Keith said thoughtfully. "Maybe more if we reach out to the Montana boys. They're close enough." "Make it 100, Dale decided. "Full show of unity. We don't do this halfway and we don't do this quietly. If we're going to challenge perceptions, we do it in a way no one can ignore." Tommy pulled out his phone, already scrolling through contacts. "I can have 20 brothers here from Rapid City within 2 hours. Another 15 from Spearfish. Sturgis chapter will bring at least 30. Montana will come if we ask," Marcus added. "We helped them with that charity run last summer. They'll answer the call." Ryan felt something swelling in his chest, something that had been dormant for too long. Hope, maybe, or purpose. "What are we going to do when we get here? We can't just show up and overwhelm a kid. That would terrify her." "No," Dale agreed. "We do this right. We do this thoughtful. We show up, yes, full presence, full brotherhood, but we come bearing gifts, everything a struggling single mother and her daughter might need. Winter clothes, food, whatever we can gather in the next few hours. We make sure this child understands that her kindness created something bigger than she could imagine." "We'll need to coordinate," Keith said, his tactical mind already planning logistics. "Can't have 100 bikes converging on a small diner parking lot without warning. We need to stage it, make it meaningful rather than chaotic. And we need to make sure the mom doesn't freak out," Tommy added. "We're trying to honor the kid, not terrify the family." Dale looked at each of his brothers in turn, seeing agreement and determination in their faces. everyone in favor of making this happen. 4 hands rose immediately, firm and unanimous. Then let's make the calls. 2 hours, we regroup. Spread the word through the chapters. This is about more than one kind kid. This is about showing who we really are. This is about the gap between reputation and reality. Dale's voice carried the weight of leadership, of conviction. And brothers, make sure everyone knows, we ride respectful, we ride dignified, and we ride to prove that humanity matters more than prejudice. The group dispersed into coordinated action, phones coming out, contacts being scrolled, messages being sent across the network of brotherhood that stretched throughout the region. Within minutes, the word was spreading. Something special was happening in Deadwood, something that required presence, something that mattered. Ryan stood by his broken bike, still holding the pink scarf, watching his brothers work. Through the diner window, he could see Sophia and her mother finishing breakfast, the little girl laughing at something. She had no idea what her simple act of kindness had set in motion. She couldn't possibly understand that her willingness to see beyond appearances, to offer comfort without judgment, had touched something fundamental in men who'd spent years being judged on sight. "Hey, Ryan," Dale called, walking back over after finishing a phone call. "That scarf? You're keeping that safe. When we come back, you're the one who returns it to her, along with everything else we're bringing. This started with you and that little girl. It should end with you and that little girl." Ryan nodded, carefully wrapping the scarf and tucking it into his vest's inner pocket, close to his heart. 2 hours, you said. 2 hours. We'll have the biggest show of brotherhood this town has ever seen. And by the time we're done, everyone in Deadwood will know exactly what it means to show kindness to someone wearing this patch. Dale touched his death head insignia almost reverently. "We're going to make sure that little girl never forgets what her compassion created. She changed something," Ryan said quietly. "Not just for me, for all of us. Reminded us why we do what we do, why community matters." "Yeah," Dale agreed. "She did. Now we return the favor." The morning continued its march toward afternoon, the sun climbing higher in the cold February sky. In living rooms and garages throughout South Dakota and Montana, phones rang and messages chimed. Brothers who'd been working on bikes, having coffee, spending time with families, they all received the same call. A little girl had shown kindness to one of their own. The brotherhood was responding. Everyone who could ride, rode. At the Silverado diner, Sophia and Jennifer finished their breakfast, paid their bill, and prepared to head to school and work respectively. Neither of them knew that 2 hours from now, their world would change. Neither of them could imagine what was already in motion. But in the network of brotherhood that stretched across state lines and chapters, the message was clear. Kindness would not go unanswered. Compassion would not be forgotten. And a little girl who saw humanity where others saw only patches and leather was about to learn what it truly meant when 80 Hell's Angels decided to show their gratitude. The rumble, when it came, would echo through Deadwood for years to come. The gathering point was an abandoned gas station 7 miles outside Deadwood, off Highway 385, where it curved through the Black Hills. The building had been closed for a decade, victim of a highway reroute that sent traffic elsewhere, but the large parking lot remained intact beneath layers of snow and ice. It was perfect for their purposes, isolated enough to avoid premature attention, spacious enough to accommodate what was shaping up to be the largest gathering of brotherhood the region had seen outside of the annual Sturgis rally. They started arriving at 8:30, the sound of multiple motorcycles creating a thunder that rolled through the pine-covered hills. The Black Hills chapter came first, Ryan's brothers, who'd been making calls and gathering supplies for the past 90 minutes. They brought more than just themselves. Their bikes, saddlebags, and the trucks that followed were loaded with winter coats, boots, scarves, groceries, gift cards, and more. Tommy Briggs had stopped at the Walmart in Rapid City, clearing out their children's winter clothing section with the help of his wife, who knew exactly what a 7-year-old girl would need. Coats, snow pants, boots in multiple sizes, gloves, hats, everything to ensure Sophia would be warm, no matter how cold the winter got. The total had been close to $800, but Tommy hadn't hesitated. The Brotherhood had a fund for exactly these purposes, and every member contributed monthly. Marcus Webb had gone to the grocery store, filling 3 shopping carts with staples: pasta, rice, canned goods, fresh vegetables, meat, milk, bread, everything a struggling family needed. His cart also held treats: ice cream, cookies, hot chocolate mix, things that made a house feel like a home. He'd spent an hour choosing carefully, remembering his own childhood when money was tight and sometimes dinner was cereal and optimism. Keith Monroe had visited the toy store, something that surprised no one who truly knew him. He'd selected carefully: educational games, art supplies, books, a beautiful doll with long brown hair that reminded him of Sophia. Not overwhelming, not excessive, but thoughtful. Things a child would treasure. The Rapid City chapter arrived at 8:45, 23 strong, their president, Alex Carter, riding at the front. They'd brought winter clothes for an adult woman: coats, boots, warm work scrubs for someone who clearly spent long hours in medical settings. They'd also brought an envelope containing $1,000 in gas cards because they'd heard about the worn Honda and the long commute. The Spearfish chapter came next, 17 brothers who'd raided their own closets and contacted local businesses. The owner of Miller's Hardware had donated a space heater, toolkit, and various household items. The pharmacy had contributed a basket of first aid supplies and over-the-counter medications, small contributions that collectively represented a community within a community, bikers who understood struggle and wanted to help. The Sturgis chapter arrived last, 31 strong, led by their grizzled president Carl Davis, a Vietnam veteran who'd founded the chapter in 1978. They brought perhaps the most significant contribution, a check for $5,000 drawn from the chapter's charity fund. Attached was a note: for vehicle repair, household expenses, or whatever will make life easier, with respect and gratitude from brothers who remember kindness. And from Montana, crossing state lines in the cold morning air, came 28 additional riders. The Billings chapter had heard about a little girl who saw humanity beneath the patches, and they'd decided this was worth the 200-mile journey. They brought sleeping bags rated for Arctic temperatures, more winter gear, and most touchingly, a hand-carved music box that played a soft lullaby crafted by one of their members who worked as a carpenter and wanted to contribute something personal. By 9:15, 99 motorcycles sat in the abandoned parking lot, their riders gathered in a mass of leather, patches, and brotherhood. The temperature remained brutally cold, but no one complained. They stamped their feet and blew on their hands, but they stayed focused on why they'd come. Dale Warren stood on the gas station's old concrete apron, elevated slightly above the gathering. His presence commanded attention without requiring volume. "Brothers," he began, his voice carrying across the assembled riders, "most of you got the basic story through the calls, but I want Ryan to tell it himself. I want you to hear firsthand why we're here, why this matters." Ryan stepped forward, the pink scarf now visible around his neck. Several of the Montana riders did double takes, clearly not having heard that particular detail. Ryan didn't care about the ribbing he'd get later. This scarf represented something far more important than his ego. "This morning, I was freezing in a diner parking lot, waiting for help with my broken bike. I'd been out there for 5 hours in temperatures around 0. I was shaking so hard I thought my teeth would crack." Ryan's voice was steady, but emotional. A little girl, 7 years old, tiny thing with braids and a smile that could light up the dark. She came out of that diner and gave me this scarf. Her grandmother made it. It's probably one of her most precious possessions, and she gave it to me without hesitation, without fear, without judgment." The assembled brothers listened in complete silence, an unusual state for such a large group. She didn't see my vest. She didn't see my patches. She didn't see a Hell's Angel or a criminal or a thug or whatever the hell people usually see when they look at us. She saw a human being who was cold, and she decided to do something about it. Ryan's voice cracked slightly. "When's the last time any of you were treated like just a person? When's the last time someone showed you kindness without expecting anything in return, without fear, without prejudice?" Heads shook. Expressions reflected understanding, recognition of shared experience. Every man there had stories of being judged on sight, of watching people cross streets to avoid them, of seeing fear in eyes when all they'd done was exist in their leather and patches. "This little girl reminded me of something I'd forgotten," Ryan continued. "That beneath all the reputation, beneath the stereotypes, beneath the walls we've built, we're still human. And when someone treats us that way, when someone shows us the kind of compassion this child showed me, we have a responsibility to prove that their faith wasn't misplaced." "Damn right," someone called from the crowd, and murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. Dale stepped forward again. "So here's what we're going to do. We're going to ride into Deadwood in formation, respectful, dignified, showing the discipline and brotherhood that defines who we really are. We're going to arrive at that diner, and we're going to present this family with everything we've gathered. We're going to show that little girl that her kindness created something bigger than she could possibly imagine. We're also going to show this town," Carl Davis added, his weathered voice carrying authority earned through decades, "that we're not the monsters they think we are. We're fathers, husbands, veterans, workers, men who've chosen brotherhood and who understand loyalty. We're going to challenge every stereotype they hold, not with words, but with actions." "Few ground rules." Keith Monroe stepped up, his sergeant-at-arms role kicking in. "We ride tight formation, speed limit, no showboating. We're not trying to intimidate. We're trying to impress. When we arrive, we park orderly. No revving engines unnecessarily, no aggressive posturing. We're representing something bigger than ourselves today." "We'll have designated brothers handle the presentation," Dale added. "Ryan will return the scarf and speak for the chapter. Tommy, Marcus, and Keith will help with the gifts. The rest of you, your presence, your support, you're the visible proof that brotherhood means something. You're showing this town who we really are." "One more thing," Alex Carter from Rapid City called out. "What if the mom freaks out? What if she thinks we're there to cause trouble? 100 bikers showing up could be terrifying from her perspective." "We send someone ahead," Dale decided immediately. "Someone who can explain, who can get permission, who can make sure this is received the way it's intended. Tommy, you've got daughters. You understand how parents think. You go ahead, you talk to the mother. You make sure she understands we're there to honor her daughter's kindness, not to overwhelm or frighten." Tommy nodded, understanding the weight of that responsibility. "I can do that. Give me 15 minutes head start. I'll make sure she understands our intentions." "Good." Dale looked across the assembled brothers, seeing determination and purpose in every face. "This is about more than one kind girl. This is about challenging the narrative that defines us. This is about proving that humanity exists everywhere, even in places society doesn't expect to find it. Today, we're not just Hell's Angels. We're men showing gratitude, honoring compassion, and demonstrating that respect goes both ways." "We ride for the girl!" someone shouted, and the cry was taken up across the gathering. "We ride for brotherhood!" "We ride to prove them wrong!" Dale raised his hand, calling for silence. "We ride with dignity. We ride with purpose. And we ride to make damn sure that little girl never regrets showing kindness to someone wearing this patch." He touched his death head insignia with obvious pride. "Mount up, brothers. It's time to show Deadwood what we're really made of." The next 10 minutes were controlled chaos as 99 riders prepared for departure. Bikes were checked, formation order was established, final adjustments were made to the cargo they carried. Tommy Briggs headed out first in his truck, the bed loaded with supplies, his mission to smooth the way for what would follow. Ryan stood beside his bike, now fixed, courtesy of Marcus bringing the right tools and 3 brothers spending 40 minutes in the cold doing rapid repairs. He touched the pink scarf beneath his vest, feeling its softness, remembering small hands offering it without hesitation. "You ready for this?" Dale asked, pulling his bike alongside Ryan's. Ready to prove a 7-year-old's faith in humanity wasn't misplaced. "Yeah, Dale, I'm ready." Ryan's expression was determined, emotional. "I'm ready to show her that kindness matters, that compassion creates ripples, that one small act can change everything." "Then let's ride." The first engine roared to life, then another, then 10, then 50, until the abandoned gas station parking lot thundered with the sound of 99 Harley-Davidson motorcycles. The noise was immense, powerful, but controlled. This wasn't chaos, it was orchestrated force, brotherhood given physical form. At 9:30 precisely, the formation pulled out onto Highway 385, heading toward Deadwood. They rode 2 abreast, maintaining proper spacing, respecting traffic laws, showing discipline. Passing motorists pulled over in shock, some filming on their phones, others simply staring at the massive procession of motorcycles moving with military precision through the Black Hills. Word began spreading ahead of them. Something big was happening, something unprecedented. Social media lit up with posts and videos. Massive motorcycle convoy heading toward Deadwood. Never seen this many Hell's Angels in one place. What's happening in Deadwood? But no one knew the answer, not yet. In Deadwood, Tommy Briggs parked his truck outside the Silverado diner at 9:40. Jennifer Mitchell and Sophia had long since left, Jennifer dropping her daughter at school before heading to the hospital for her shift. Tommy had anticipated this, had planned for it. He walked into the diner, his presence immediately drawing attention. Frank Hutchins looked up from the counter, his expression hardening. "We don't serve bikers, I know." Tommy's voice was respectful, gentle even. "I'm not here for service, sir. I'm here to ask for information and to explain something that's about to happen. Something good, I promise. Can I have 5 minutes of your time?" Frank studied him warily, but something in Tommy's tone, his demeanor, made him pause. 5 minutes. Talk fast. "There was a little girl here this morning, 7 years old, with her mother. She gave my brother her scarf because he was cold." Tommy pulled out his phone, showing the photo Ryan had sent, the pink scarf with white snowflakes. "We'd like to return her kindness. We'd like to thank her properly. Can you tell me how to find her family?" Frank's expression shifted from wariness to surprise. "Sophia Mitchell, Jenny's girl. Good kid, that one. Always polite, always kind." That kindness, it meant something. It meant enough that in about 15 minutes, close to 100 of my brothers are going to arrive in this parking lot. "We're not here to cause trouble, sir. We're here to honor that little girl's compassion, to show her and this town that beneath these vests, we're men who understand gratitude and respect." Tommy's voice was earnest, genuine. "But we need your help. We need you to call the mother, explain what's happening, make sure she understands our intentions. We need permission to present gifts to her family, winter clothes, food, household items, things we've gathered to honor her daughter's kindness." Frank stared at Tommy for a long moment, processing this information. His first instinct was suspicion. Bikers didn't show up in 100-bike groups to honor kindness. But looking at Tommy's face, at the sincerity there, at the obvious emotion behind his words, Frank found himself reconsidering decades of assumptions. "You're serious. You're really here to thank a little girl for giving your friend a scarf. We're here to prove that humanity matters more than prejudice, that kindness deserves recognition, and that sometimes the people society fears the most are the ones who understand compassion best." Tommy's voice carried conviction. "Please, sir, let us do this right. Let us show you who we really are." Frank made a decision. He picked up his phone, scrolled through contacts, and dialed. "Jenny, it's Frank from the diner. Listen, something's about to happen, and you need to hear it from me first." Outside, in the distance, the rumble of 99 motorcycles grew closer, a thunder rolling through the Black Hills toward Deadwood, carrying with it the promise that today, everything would change. The sound reached Deadwood before the bikes did, a low rumble that grew steadily, reverberating off the historic buildings and through the narrow streets. Residents emerged from shops and homes, conversations stopping mid-sentence, heads turning toward Main Street where the noise originated. Some people immediately went inside, locking doors, old fears and stereotypes triggering protective responses. Others stayed, curious, uncertain, filming on their phones, because whatever was happening, it was unprecedented. Frank Hutchins stood outside the Silverado diner, his phone still warm from the 20-minute conversation with Jennifer Mitchell. She'd been skeptical at first, frightened even, but Frank's reassurances and Tommy Briggs's patient explanation when Frank had passed the phone over had gradually shifted her response from fear to cautious acceptance. She'd called the hospital, told them she had a family emergency, and was now driving back from Rapid City with Sophia. They'd arrive in about 30 minutes, right around the time the motorcycles would. Tommy stood beside Frank, his posture relaxed but attentive, aware that every eye was on him. "Thank you for trusting us," he said quietly, "for giving us the chance to do this right." "Haven't trusted you yet," Frank replied, but his tone wasn't harsh. "I'm waiting to see if your actions match your words, but I'll say this, that little girl is special, pure heart, that one. If you're really here to honor her, then maybe I've been wrong about some things." The first motorcycles appeared at the end of Main Street at 10:03 a.m. They came in perfect formation, two abreast, riding at exactly the speed limit, their chrome gleaming in the late morning sun. Dale Warren and Ryan Caldwell led the procession, followed by chapter presidents, then officers, then members in order of seniority. It was military precision applied to motorcycle culture, discipline, and brotherhood made visible. The formation turned into the Silverado Diner's parking lot, and what happened next would be talked about in Deadwood for decades. Instead of chaos, instead of noise and aggression, the 99 riders executed a choreographed parking arrangement that would have impressed a military drill sergeant. They filled the parking lot in neat rows, each bike positioned with care, engines cutting off in synchronized waves until the thunder faded to silence. The riders dismounted, standing beside their motorcycles, and the visual impact was overwhelming. Leather vests, patches, denim boots, a sea of motorcycle club culture, all of it organized, all of it purposeful. No shouting, no aggression, no threatening behavior. Just 99 men standing in respectful silence, waiting. Dale and Ryan walked toward where Tommy and Frank stood. Dale extended his hand to Frank, a gesture of respect rather than dominance. "Sir, I'm Dale Warren, president of the Black Hills chapter. We're here today because of something extraordinary. A little girl showed one of our brothers kindness when he needed it most. We're here to honor that compassion and to thank her properly." Frank shook his hand warily, still processing the sight of nearly 100 Hell's Angels standing silently in his parking lot. "You've got quite a show here. Hope you're planning to match it with substance." "We are, sir. I promise you that." Dale's voice carried absolute sincerity. The crowd of onlookers had grown, curious residents gathering at a safe distance, phones raised, filming everything. Among them were local business owners, retirees, families with children, all watching with expressions ranging from fear to fascination. The Deadwood police had arrived as well, 2 officers parking their cruiser nearby, hands near their radios, but not interfering. Even they seemed uncertain how to process what they were witnessing. At 10:27, Jennifer Mitchell's Honda Civic pulled into the parking lot. The car looked even more worn and tired, surrounded by 99 gleaming motorcycles. Jennifer parked carefully, her face pale but determined, and helped Sophia out of the passenger seat. The little girl's eyes went wide, taking in the massive gathering, searching until she found the one face she recognized. "That's the man from this morning," Sophia's voice carried in the sudden silence, pure and clear. "Mama! He came back!" Ryan Caldwell stepped forward slowly, carefully, aware that every movement was being watched by the child's mother, by his brothers, by the town. He knelt down when he was still several feet away, making himself less imposing, meeting Sophia at eye level. The pink scarf was in his hands, carefully folded. "Hi again," he said softly. "I wanted to return something you let me borrow this morning, and to say thank you properly." Sophia approached without fear, that same openness that had moved Ryan earlier still present in her expression. "Did it keep you warm?" "It did. Warmer than I've been in a long time. Warm in a way that had nothing to do with temperature." Ryan held out the scarf, and Sophia took it carefully, hugging it to her chest. Jennifer moved to stand beside her daughter, one hand protectively on Sophia's shoulder. She looked at Ryan, at Dale, at the assembled brotherhood, her expression complex, still wary, but beginning to show understanding. "My daughter has a kind heart, sometimes too kind for her own good." "No, ma'am," Dale said, stepping forward respectfully. "Not too kind, exactly kind enough. Your daughter did something this morning that reminded 99 men of something they'd almost forgotten, that beneath appearances, beneath reputations, beneath everything society uses to divide people, we're all human. We all feel cold. We all need compassion. And when someone shows us that compassion, especially when we're not used to receiving it, it means something profound." Jennifer's eyes were beginning to shine with unshed tears. "So you gathered all these people just to say thank you to a 7-year-old? We gathered all these people to prove that your daughter's instinct was right, that we're worthy of the kindness she showed, that beneath these vests we're fathers, brothers, friends, veterans, workers. We're men who understand loyalty, who honor debts, and who believe that compassion should always be answered with gratitude." Dale's voice carried emotion now. "Your daughter saw us as human beings. We wanted to show her and show this town that her perception was accurate." Ryan reached into his vest and pulled out an envelope, offering it to Jennifer. "This is from all of us. It's not payment. You can't pay someone for genuine kindness. It's gratitude. It's resources to make your life a little easier, to ensure your daughter stays warm this winter, to help however we can." Jennifer took the envelope with shaking hands, opening it to find the check from Sturgis chapter, the gas cards, the gift certificates to local stores. Her hand went to her mouth, tears finally spilling over. This is too much. We can't accept." "Yes, ma'am, you can." Tommy Briggs stepped forward, his voice gentle. "Because this isn't charity. This is brotherhood extending to someone who showed brotherhood to one of our own. This is a community within a community, recognizing someone who embodies the values we hold sacred." Behind them, the brothers began moving with coordinated purpose. They started unloading the trucks, bringing forward the winter clothes, the groceries, the household items, the toys, the sleeping bags, everything they'd gathered. They organized it on the diner's outdoor tables, creating a display that represented hours of thought, collective resources, and genuine care. Sophia watched with enormous eyes, holding her grandmother's scarf, trying to process the magnitude of what was happening. All this Because I gave you my scarf. Ryan smiled, and it transformed his weathered face into something gentle. All this because you saw a person instead of a patch. All this because you showed kindness when it would have been easier to walk by. All this because you proved that compassion matters more than fear. Frank Hutchins had been watching everything, his expression shifting gradually. He stepped forward now, looking at Dale. I've had a rule for 30 years. No motorcycle clubs in my establishment. I thought I had good reasons for that rule. Thought people like you brought trouble everywhere you went. And now? Dale asked quietly. Now I'm thinking maybe I've been judging books by their covers. Maybe I've been letting fear dictate policy instead of giving people a chance to show their character. Frank extended his hand again, this time with genuine respect. You boys want to come inside for coffee? On the house? Seems like the least I can do after you proved me wrong about pretty much everything. The offer rippled through the assembled brothers. This was unprecedented, a barrier being lowered, acceptance being offered where only rejection had existed before. Several of them looked to Dale, waiting for his response. We'd be honored, sir, Dale said, but we can't all fit inside, and we won't overwhelm your business. How about some of us accept your hospitality while the rest enjoy this cold morning with the satisfaction of knowing we did something good? Frank nodded. Fair enough. Presidents and officers inside. Everyone else, I'll have my staff bring out coffee and pastries. Nobody goes cold today. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it represented a massive shift. As Dale, Ryan, and the chapter presidents followed Frank inside, the remaining brothers settled into a comfortable gathering in the parking lot, their presence no longer threatening, but almost protective. Sophia tugged on Ryan's sleeve before he could follow the others inside. Can I ask you something? He knelt down again, patient. Anything, sweetheart. Are you a good person? The question, delivered with childish directness, cut through every defense Ryan had built over 20 years. He thought about his choices, his life, the brotherhood he'd chosen. He thought about moments he wasn't proud of and moments that defined him. Finally, he answered with equal honesty. I try to be. I don't always succeed, and I've made mistakes. But I try every day to be loyal, to protect people I care about, to help when I can. Your kindness this morning reminded me why that matters. So maybe I'm not all the way good yet, but I'm working on it. And meeting you helped me want to work harder. Sophia considered this seriously, then smiled. I think you're good. Good people say thank you when someone helps them. You said thank you really big. She held up the scarf. And you took care of my grandmother's scarf. That means you're careful with important things. Your grandmother must have been a special person to raise someone like you. She said kindness is never wrong. Was she right? Ryan felt his throat tighten with emotion. Yes, sweetheart, she was absolutely right, and you proved it today in a way that's going to change a lot of things around here. Inside the diner, Frank poured coffee for the gathered presidents while his staff, initially nervous about serving Hell's Angels, gradually relaxed as they witnessed respectful behavior and genuine gratitude. Dale explained the club's history of charity work, the toy runs, the veteran support programs, the community initiatives that never made the news because they didn't fit the narrative society preferred. We're not saints, Dale said honestly. We're flawed men who've chosen brotherhood over isolation, but we're also not the devils people make us out to be. We're somewhere in between, trying to live by a code that values loyalty, respect, and community. Frank listened, occasionally nodding, his worldview shifting with each word. I served in Vietnam. Came back to find people looked at me like I was damaged, dangerous. I understand being judged by association, by perception, rather than reality. Maybe that should have made me more understanding of you boys. Instead, I let my own experiences make me harder, more judgmental. Fear makes us all harder, Carl Davis from Sturgis said quietly. The trick is recognizing when that hardness is protecting us versus when it's isolating us. Today, a 7-year-old girl taught all of us that sometimes the best protection is being open enough to see the humanity in unexpected places. Outside, Jennifer Mitchell stood surrounded by the resources the Brotherhood had gathered, tears streaming freely now. Sophia stood beside her, hugging the scarf, beginning to understand that she'd created something far bigger than she'd imagined. Tommy Briggs and Marcus Webb were helping load items into Jennifer's car, respectful of her space but determined to ensure she accepted everything offered. "I don't know what to say," Jennifer said, her voice breaking. "This morning I was angry at Sophia for approaching a stranger. I lectured her about safety, about not talking to people like us," Marcus finished gently. "It's okay to say it. You were protecting your daughter. That's what good mothers do." But she saw something I didn't. She saw a person who needed help, and she helped. She ignored everything I've taught her about stranger danger and stereotypes, and she just acted from her heart. Jennifer looked at her daughter with a mixture of pride and wonder. She was right. She was completely right. "Maybe that's the lesson for all of us," Tommy said. "Kids haven't learned to be afraid yet. They haven't absorbed all the prejudices and stereotypes. They just see people. Maybe we should try harder to remember how to do that." The gathering in the parking lot lasted another hour. More residents approached, gradually, cautiously, some with phones raised, but others with genuine curiosity. Several veterans in the crowd recognized the military bearing of some brothers, the patches indicating service. Conversations began, barriers lowered, understanding developed. By noon, the temperature had risen slightly, the sun higher and stronger. The brothers began preparing to depart, the formation that would take them back to their respective chapters, but before they left, they gathered one final time, creating a circle around Sophia and Jennifer, 99 men showing respect to a tiny girl in a pink coat. Dale addressed them all. "Brothers, we came here today to honor kindness. We came to show gratitude. We came to prove that humanity exists beneath these patches. But we're leaving with more than we brought. We're leaving with proof that one small act of compassion can create waves that reach farther than we ever imagined. We're leaving with a reminder that the barriers between people are almost always artificial, maintained by fear rather than reality." He looked down at Sophia. "Young lady, you changed something today, not just for us, but for this whole town. You showed everyone here that kindness matters, that compassion is powerful, and that seeing people for who they really are, rather than who we're told they are, is one of the most important things anyone can do." Sophia smiled, that same pure expression that had started everything. "I just gave you my scarf because you were cold." And that simple act reminded 99 men what it means to be human. Never underestimate the power of kindness, sweetheart. Never doubt that compassion can change the world. The brothers mounted their bikes, the formation re-establishing with the same precision they'd shown arriving. Engines roared to life, that thunder rolling once more through Deadwood streets. But this time, people didn't retreat in fear. They stayed, watching, some waving, a few even smiling. Ryan Caldwell, last to mount his bike, looked back at Sophia one final time. She stood with her mother, wrapped in her grandmother's scarf, surrounded by evidence of compassion multiplied. He raised his hand in a small wave, and she waved back enthusiastically. Then the formation pulled out, 99 motorcycles moving as one through the streets of Deadwood, heading back to their respective homes, their lives, their responsibilities. But each rider carried something new, a reminder that beneath reputation, beneath stereotypes, beneath all the walls society builds between people, humanity finds a way to connect. The rumble faded gradually, the sound disappearing into the Black Hills until silence returned. But the impact remained. In the following days, Deadwood's local newspaper would run a front-page story. Acts of kindness. How one child changed a town's perception. Social media exploded with videos and photos, the narrative spreading far beyond South Dakota's borders. Frank Hutchins took down his "No Motorcycle Clubs" sign the next day, replacing it with one that read, "All are welcome." Business owners throughout Deadwood began reconsidering policies based on appearance rather than behavior. Conversations started happening, barriers lowering, understanding growing. Jennifer Mitchell found herself crying at random moments for a week, overwhelmed by the generosity, humbled by the realization that her own prejudices had almost prevented her from seeing the truth. She made a point of teaching Sophia not to be less kind, but to be smartly kind, maintaining her beautiful instinct to help while developing awareness of genuine danger versus perceived threat. And Sophia wore her grandmother's scarf every day that winter, but now when people asked about it, she told them a story. She told them about a cold morning, a shivering man, and how one small act of kindness created something beautiful and unexpected. She told them that her grandmother was right. Kindness is never wrong, and sometimes it can change everything. The pink scarf became famous in its own way, a symbol of the gap between perception and reality, a reminder that humanity exists everywhere if we're brave enough to look for it. Ryan Caldwell kept a photo on his phone. Sophia wearing the scarf, smiling at the camera, surrounded by 80 bikers who'd come from across 2 states to prove that gratitude matters. He looked at that photo on hard days, on days when the world seemed harsh and unwelcoming, on days when being judged by his vest felt too heavy to bear. That photo reminded him why brotherhood existed, why loyalty mattered, why fighting against stereotypes, not with violence but with visible compassion, was worth every effort. It reminded him that somewhere in South Dakota, a 7-year-old girl had seen him as human when everyone else saw only patches and leather. And that perception, that simple, childlike wisdom, had created something that 99 grown men would never forget. The story spread, as good stories do. It reached other chapters, other clubs, other communities where perception and reality existed in constant tension. It became a reminder that sometimes the most profound statements are made not with words, but with actions, not with aggression, but with gratitude, not with isolation, but with community. And in Deadwood, South Dakota, on cold winter mornings, when the wind cut through the Black Hills and frost formed patterns on windows, people sometimes paused and remembered the day 80 Hells Angels showed up to say, "Thank you" to a little girl. They remembered the sound of 99 motorcycles, the sight of that organized brotherhood, the feeling of witnessing prejudice transform into respect. Most importantly, they remembered that beneath every vest, every patch, every reputation and stereotype, human beings exist, flawed, complex, capable of both darkness and extraordinary light. They remembered that sometimes all it takes to reveal that light is the simple kindness of a child who hasn't yet learned to be afraid. Sophia Mitchell grew up telling that story, wearing that scarf until it was too worn to wear anymore, then keeping it carefully preserved in a box with her grandmother's other treasures. She never forgot the lesson that cold February morning taught her, that kindness creates ripples, that compassion is contagious, and that seeing people for who they truly are, rather than who society says they should be, is one of the most powerful things any person can do. And somewhere in the Black Hills of South Dakota, 99 men rode their motorcycles through their lives, carrying that same lesson, proving it day after day, extending compassion wherever they went, honoring the debt they owed to a 7-year-old girl who'd shown them what it meant to be truly seen. The gap between prejudice and reality closed a little that day in Deadwood. It didn't disappear. Centuries of stereotypes don't dissolve in a single morning, but it narrowed enough for light to shine through. And that light, sparked by the kindness of a child and amplified by the gratitude of brotherhood, continued to illuminate the darkness for years to come.